Hi, I'm Calivan. Modern video game development is rife with stories about mismanagement, unmet expectations and fractured relationships, so when something actually does go well, I think it's nice to talk about it a bit, to bring a bit of balance to the discussion. A few years ago there was a bit of a success story where a publisher and a developer worked hand in hand together to create a great product, and that product was called Battlestar Galactica Deadlock. An Australian-based developer, Black Lab Games, had recently developed a game which was published by a UK-based independent publisher Slitherine Limited. Now, I've never played Starhammer myself, but for all accounts it was a competent game that did well enough for an indie game from a small studio. During a What's Next meeting with the publisher, Black Lab was asked by Slitherine if there was any particular IPs that they would like to work with. Paul Turbot, the founder of Black Labs, listed off a few of his favourites and thought nothing more of it. One of those favourites was Battlestar Galactica. Slitherine went away and did their thing. They had some experience negotiating intellectual property in the past, having previously released a Warhammer 40k game, and they managed to successfully secure the rights to make a game in the Battlestar universe. With a core team of just 5 individuals, Black Lab Games went on to produce Deadlock. But they didn't have to go it alone. Slitherine had a long-term working relationship with a Los Angeles-based sound engineer and arranged for the voiceover talent to be sourced and recordings made in LA. But what did they create? Well, Deadlock is a 3-dimensional turn-based strategy game set, unsurprisingly, in the Battlestar Galactica universe. More specifically, it's set during the First Cylon War. For those of you not up on your Battlestar lore, these are the highlights. Some distant humans on the far side of the galaxy created a race of sentient robots to help them with hard labour and warfare. This robot race, the Cylons, rose up against their human masters, leading to a 12-year conflict, commonly referred to as the First Cylon War. This war ends with an armistice, and the Cylons head off into space to find a new home. Some 40 years later they return, kicking off the Second Cylon War, which is depicted by the 2004 TV series. As far as the turn-based side of it goes, it's handled very well and at times feels more like a pausable real-time game. A more traditional turn-based game would see a player resolve their entire turn before moving on to the opponent's turn. They would move their ships, fire their weapons, calculate damage and attempt repairs, all of which would be resolved within the actual turn itself. Their opponent would then respond to these moves and attacks with their own. However, in Deadlock, both you and your opponent take turns simultaneously. You issue orders to your units, and then at the end of the turn there is a segment of about 5 seconds that plays out in real time, where you can watch all of the units attempt to carry out their assigned orders. Ships don't immediately flip and turn on their axis, they manoeuvre along their given path, engaging enemy vessels as they come into their firing arcs. Some munitions, like guided warheads, travel at a fixed velocity so they can take multiple turns to actually reach their target, meaning that you've got time to try and shoot them down or rotate your ship to try and take the hits on the side with the most armour. One of my favourite features is the post-battle replay, which allows you to watch a repeat of the battle in real time so you can get a feel for how the fight really played out. You can use your own camera controls to view it however you like, but the automatic camera is really well done and gives you a lovely cinematic of the battle which is very watchable. Whoever created this feature was obviously a fan of the 2004 TV series, as the positioning, tracking and movement of the camera is very reminiscent of the battles featured in the show, and the accompanying music is spot on. The ships themselves are well thought out and there are a lot of different things that you can control that have a real effect on the engagement. As well as choosing the speed and axis of travel for each vessel, you can set specific targets for each weapon system. Vessels have different amounts of armour on different sides, armour which is reduced as hits are taken. Getting the movement and positioning of your vessel just right has a dramatic effect on the outcome of the battle. If you lose all of your armour, hits will start damaging internal systems which, depending on the location, will reduce the effectiveness of each ship in such areas as manoeuvrability and accuracy. You can instruct your damage control teams to focus on a particular area to repair it, but you can only choose one area at a time, and it often takes that subsystem totally offline during the repairs, so you have to think carefully about what to repair and when to do it. You can also move between different levels of defensive and offensive postures for each ship, useful for when you want to rapidly overwhelm a target's defences or make one of your own ships more resilient for a while. If you get it wrong, it can be very costly, but used at the right time it can really make a difference. There's also a third option where you can hamper your own offensive and defensive abilities in order to push your engines to the max, useful for when you need to close a gap or reposition fast to address an unexpected threat. What I like most about the majority of the ship controls in Deadlock is how everything is a trade-off. In other similar games, I've often felt that there is one option that is generally better than all of the others, and the abilities I have should mostly be used as frequently as possible. With Deadlock, I really get a feel like using the right choices at the right time has a real and noticeable effect on the battle, and that I'm rewarded for using smart tactics and thinking ahead. Some of the larger ships, like the Battlestars themselves, have even more tactical options available to them. You can launch squadrons of fighters which can be used to attack the enemy ships, interdict the enemy's fighters, or form a defensive perimeter around one of your other capital ships, shooting down incoming missiles before they can impact on the target. Again, it's all about choice. Fighter squadrons are a limited commodity, and it's important to use them at the right time and in the right way. My favourite thing about using a Battlestar has got to be the flak battery. You may remember this from the TV show, where Galactica was able to use a multitude of weapons as an instrument of area denial on one side of the ship. If you swing your Battlestar around and put your left or your right flank towards the enemy fleet, you can create an impenetrable wall of ordnance that stops any fighters or missiles from getting anywhere close to you. Full employment of this feature, plus correct use of your positioning, fighter squadrons, guided missiles, posture and damage control makes these vessels very potent, and I've found them to be a real joy to use. Just as the battles are a perfect place to refine and execute your own tactics, the single player mode gives you an arena to show off your strategic prowess. Rather than just a simple collection of missions, Deadlock includes a fully featured single-player campaign that has you managing production of new ships, organising fleets and recruiting new officers so that you can best take the fight to the enemy. The strategy layer all takes place on the centre console of a command station, where you're shown a tactical map of local space and the 12 colonies. You can jump your fleets to different planets or sectors of space to engage in a variety of missions that all push the campaign further along. Ship losses are final, so it's important to continue to complete missions in a satisfactory way, so that you keep as much of your fleet as possible, and then use the resources you're rewarded with to build and launch new ships. As the campaign progresses, you're given access to bigger and better vessels, opening up new tactical options and allowing you to complete more challenging missions. Your superior officer, Admiral Kane, briefs you along the way and provides information on new missions and objectives. She's a tough, uncompromising sort, not unlike the Admiral Kane from the TV series. They aren't the same character, but I think they're supposed to be related. There are a variety of other characters involved in the plot, including some other officers that help you along with various elements of your fleet management. I found these to be suitable for the role and competently voice acted, but mostly forgettable. There are story elements for you to follow, but I'll be honest, I was mostly there for the space battles, so the overarching plot of the base game didn't really make much of an impact on me. I think this is mostly a me problem rather than a problem with the game, so if you are the kind of person that wants to know why you're blowing stuff up, then I don't think you'll be too disappointed either. I've focused on the single player campaign as that's what I spent most of my time on, but the game is fully featured and does include skirmish and multiplayer support too. They also introduced a survival mode with one of the DLCs, so that you can live out your Battlestar Galactica fantasy and attempt to lead a civilian fleet to safety while being mercilessly pursued by the Cylons. The game was released not long after another space fleet strategy game, Battlefleet Gothic Armada. I remember being initially very impressed with Battlefleet Gothic, but as time went on, as I got deeper into the game and my understanding of it increased, I found myself enjoying it less and less. The missions felt unfair, the computer opponent appeared to cheat, and the fleet I was able to bring into each mission was disappointingly small. Tactics were mostly limited to close with the enemy, fire all of your guns and use all of your abilities on cooldown. The game looked great though, the ships, the weapons, the effects were top notch, but the actual missions were pretty frustrating, and your own influence on the battlefield felt a bit limited and unsatisfying. I found Battlestar Galactica Deadlock to be pretty much the antithesis of Battlefleet Gothic. Armada is created by a bigger team and you can really feel that in the quality of the graphics, interface and the cutscenes, whereas Deadlock feels a lot more bare bones in those areas. Where Battlefleet Gothic looks flashy and impressive, Deadlock looks restrained but competent. However, once you get into the nitty-gritty of the game and you're a good few missions deep, you realise that Deadlock at its core is a far superior tactical game, and the amount of control that you're given and how rewarding it feels to exercise that control is a step above what Battlefleet Gothic can offer you. The in-game experience was not the only place where these two titles differed. Battlefleet Gothic had a few patches after release and a couple of DLC with content that should have really been in the initial release. I mean, who releases a 40k game with Space Marines as a paid extra? Instead, they went straight into working on a sequel, which was available at full price a couple of years later. In comparison to this, Deadlock was still receiving updates and official multiplayer tournament support 3 years after its release. I only played the base game myself, but if you wanted more there would be 8 DLC releases over its lifetime. These included some expansion packs that add new ships and ammo types priced at around $5 each, as well as some more weightier offerings that add new game modes and whole new campaigns. These more involved editions cost something in the region of $10 to $15 each, and all have got positive reviews, although, as I've said, I've not tried them myself, so I'm not sure how much value they really offer. The base game itself is around $35 on Steam, and I think if you like this sort of game then it's well worth the ticket price. But it's a few years old now, so you can get it significantly cheaper if you wait for a sale or shop around a bit. I really like Battlestar Galactica Deadlock and think it's a great example of the power of smaller, independent studios and publishers. Like many indie games, it might not have been as flashy or polished as its larger competitors, but it was created by a talented team who knew what people wanted out of a strategy game, understood their chosen genre, and respected the source material. It's always nice when a developer and publisher work together to make a great product, and I think Paul Turbett said it best himself in a 2017 interview. I think a lot of small independent developers see publishers as unnecessary or worse, but I think a good working relationship with the right publisher can produce some great things. Battlestar Galactica Deadlock would not exist without us or Slitherine. Thanks Paul, I'm with you on that one. Hi there. If you're one of the lucky few who owns Deadlock, I'd like to know how you feel about the game, so let me know in a comment. If I ask for a like or subscribe, I would love to hear a by your command or at least a so say we all.